Austin. My name is Gill Felix. I'm the Chief People Officer for Affiniscape, and this is Sam Baber, our Talent and Development Architect. And Sam and I have only been with Affiniscape for a very short space of time. I joined in August of this year, and Sam joined me about 6-7 weeks later, and together we make up the people team. We don't call it HR because I don't like all of the connotations that go with that. And both Sam and I are, I wouldn't necessarily say that we're experts when it comes to generational differences, but I think both of us are pretty passionate about understanding generations and how generations relate to each other, not necessarily just in the workplace, but how generations talk, communicate, respect, don't respect, etc., etc. And so in the last couple of years, Sam and I have worked together before. We've actually done more research on this. And so Ginger asked us if we would present to you guys. So we've put together an hour's presentation. Hopefully we're going to make it interactive. And I hope that you walk away with at least one small nugget, if not more, of wisdom that you may be able to take back and apply to the association. And I also would love the opportunity for you guys to share best practice as well. And before we kind of start, we wanted to get an idea, because obviously there's lots of you in the room, why this session? What is it about this title that interested you enough to walk down the corridor and be with us?
Just toss it out. We're gonna put it
Anything.
Well, our membership base has a very wide generational gap, ranging from 35 all the way to 75.
Okay.
And there are distinct differences in how we obtain those folks to be our members, how we engage them to make us more relevant, to buy more products, to come to our events. There's a distinct difference in how we engage with each set.
Absolutely. Okay. Anybody else?
Never happened my membership is at a retirement age.
Okay.
So that's something that's happened.
Right. So you can see numbers doing that. Okay. Anybody else? Anybody else having difficulty or challenges recruiting younger members?
And that's why I was hoping to get some practical ideas.
Okay.
Especially with the younger members.
Okay, great.
To get them involved
Yeah.
in the organization.
Yeah. What's just out of interest, what's your definition of a young member, age-wise?
Under or under.
Under 40. Okay, 40 or under?
25 to 30.
25 to 30. Okay. Well, I think it's really interesting when you talk to people about generations, and sometimes there are some myths associated with which generation is what, and what year actually separates generations. So we're actually going to take you through that as well. I'm sure some of you probably know all of this, but we're going to take you through anyway. So,
and I'm just curious, how many of you have a really heavy social media presence on your website? Okay, so certainly we do hope to give you a lot more tools and tips in terms of how to do that.
yeah. We're going to, yes, absolutely.
I know there was covered under number one is communicating intergenerationally, because
Yeah.
there's somebody that you email or snail mail or something.
Yeah.
That's one of the challenges that I have.
Okay.
Obstacles.
Challenges. Yes.
Well, we put a big focus with the SAEs on career paths and how generationally, how that relates, because it's one thing when you're talking about a 25-year-old who's new to our industry.
Yeah.
It's another when you're talking about, for us, a career switcher. You know, all of a sudden I've got a CEO that might be 45, but spent the first 15 years
Right.
of her career doing something different. And so I'm wondering about those career changes and how those relate back to
Okay.
generational.
Interesting.
And I can always buy you a beer later and pick your brain.
And we'll always say yes to that.
There's not time for that.
Absolutely.
But those are the things we're facing.
Okay, good.
Specifically, that's what we've been looking into that for younger members. Getting a very mixed reaction from the younger members as to whether they
Okay, interesting.
trying to figure out where they are.
Okay, cool. Well, we're gonna, yes.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
I think the other elephant in the room is the economy. I'm in the legal business. One of the problems we have is that our young members don't have jobs and have $60,000 plus in debt.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
We're actually going to talk a little bit about that as well. To start with, we're going to show you a video. Some of you may have seen this. There's a chap actually who runs a center actually based here in Austin called, and it's not Eddie Murphy. Don't worry, it's not Eddie Murphy. I just didn't edit it closely enough. The guy's name is Jason Dorsey. Some of you may have heard of Jason Dorsey. He's written a book that I'd recommend to all of you, and we're going to put up the title at the end, but it's called Why Size Your Business.
He's a wonderful speaker. We have him in Richmond. Yeah.
He's a brilliant speaker, and Jason runs a center here in Austin called the Center for Generational Kinetics, and has done an enormous amount of research on specifically Generation Y and their entry into the workplace, and how best we can communicate with Generation Y. I've spent some time with Jason. He's a brilliant speaker. Our budget, mine and Sam's budget, didn't extend to Jason, so we're going to be surrogate Jasons for you today. But we're going to show you a clip. He was on CBS Morning Show. I think it was about a couple of weeks ago.
3 weeks ago.
It's a 4 or 5 minute clip. Take a look and hear what Jason has to say.
From CBS News, it's The Early Show.
Men and women of each generation are remembered for how they changed society. Baby boomers had free love and civil rights. Generation X fought the age of irony and the dot-com bubble.
Well, as for today's young adults, if you don't know their defining characteristic, just Google it, and that's what they would do. Because the online world is incredibly important to them, as contributor Taryn Winter-Brill reports.
Millennials, also known as Generation Y. They're the teens to late 20-somethings who rely on technology more than any generation before them. 55% of millennials claim they couldn't live without it.
I think I'd rather go with internet than have heat.
Really?
A warm coat and internet access is great.
Only 25% of American teenagers held summer jobs this year, the lowest percentage ever recorded. And according to U.S. Census data, the number of young adults living with their parents is up nearly 5% since 2005. Even though the statistics are gloomy, this generation's tech cloud does have a silver lining.
So much to talk about here. Joining us now is the man known as the Gen Y guy, Jason Dorsey. He's the author of Why Size Your Business. Good to have you with us again here, Jason. Good to talk to you.
Thanks for having me back.
Okay, so millennials.
Let's understand this.
No offense.
Unfortunately,
they're not lazy, but they sure do seem demanding. I want to talk about a recent Cisco study. Draw some numbers here on the board. 56% of current college students will not accept a job from a company that bans social media. 60% think they have the right to work remotely with a flexible schedule. And 1 of 3 students prioritize social media freedom and device flexibility over salary. As someone who deals with these Generation Y people all the time, when you see these numbers, do you want to just kind of say, hey, come on?
I know their parents feel that way. Yeah, well, this is what's interesting. When we interview them, they would rather be unemployed than take a job that they think is beneath them. And this is a shock. I mean, 20 years ago, if mom or dad said, you go get a job, you got a job. And we're like, I can't look today. It's Friday. It's just a totally different mindset. And to use technology as a reason not to get a job is just another manifestation of this.
Yeah, or to turn down a job. I mean, so what are businesses doing about this? Are they saying, well, forget about it. We don't need you anyways?
It's mixed. It depends on the talent that they're looking for. If it's, say, high tech, if it's engineering, there's a real workforce shortage right now that's overlooked in all these unemployment numbers. We have the highest number of job postings in 3 years since before the recession. And these highly skilled industries are really looking for millennials and Gen Y. And so they're saying, we'll give you the smartphone, we'll let you work from home, bring your mom. It's fine. It means you'll be here on time. And so they are going out and recruiting differently. They're incentivizing differently. They're making more level organizations. And they're giving these millennials a chance to make a difference from day one. And that is what we really want. More than title, more than money.
But not to be confused, these Gen Yers are not lazy people. They just have a different mentality, right? They are highly skilled.
Well, some of them are lazy.
They sound lazy.
I have a lot of friends that haven't woken up yet. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're not looking for a job.
It is 8:45.
But they do have a different work preference. And what that means, like yesterday I spoke to all these CEOs, and they said, Jason, your generation's great. They don't show up on time, but they stay late. At 2 a.m. they're sending emails. They're doing things on the weekend.
They are working.
We just work differently, and that is the rub. Because people want us to work in the way in which they work. And that doesn't fit this generation.
But do a lot of companies say, look, we're not willing to warm up to these trends? And does that hurt a lot of kids that are trying to get jobs?
It does. It does. In fact, if I were to coach Gen Y or millennials, it would be to lower your expectations, get a job now. Because we know if you stay unemployed after high school or college graduation for a year, 2, 3 years, it's much harder to enter the workforce. You've got to take the jobs you can get now and get the experience, build your network, do these things that give you more options rather than saying, well, I got to hold out, I'm 28, I need to be a manager first. Never worked anywhere, but I got to be in management.
Yeah, and you have to take into account, too, at some point mom and dad are going to kick you out of the house, so you need to get a job.
You would think that, but it's not happening. That's what's so amazing. When we interview parents and ask them, when are you going to get your kids to leave? We just did this on my Facebook page. The average response was the age 30. Well, maybe that's 30 years. Okay, what is it?
My parents could get me out of the house at 16. I would have been.
Well, that's a whole different
I started out at college. Christian, don't even think about coming home. Great to see you. Thanks for having me. It's good to have you with us.
So, any of that resonate with you guys? Okay.
I'm just curious, any parents in the room with kids living at home? Who are out of college?
I was 14.
Just curious.
It's actually the first generation of kids who are most unemployed and who have gone home after college. And that's certainly didn't happen with Generation X, certainly didn't happen with baby boomers. Sam and I want to just do a quick kind of, I guess, quiz. I want to find out who we've got in the room today. So I would like a few of you to tell us what your first job was. First job. Anybody? Retail. Okay. And what did you earn? What was your hourly rate?
Minimum at that time.
Okay.
I want to say
maybe $3 something. Okay. All right. $2.10. Anybody earn less than $2.10? How much do you earn an hour, sir? $1.25. And what were you doing for your $1.25?
Cutting grass.
Cutting grass. Okay, for $1.25.
Were you a teenager?
Yes.
Okay.
Anybody earn more than $20 an hour for their first job? 15? Okay, interesting. Sir?
I earned 25 cents an hour and a 16-ounce Pepsi at 3 o'clock filing papers.
Excellent, that's great. Would that job...
And room and board.
And room and board. I was going to ask you whether that job still exists today. Probably not. No. It's interesting when we have had bigger audiences and you ask the question and you really do have a mix of the generations in the room. You may actually have some Gen Y, I don't want to say kids because that sounds derogatory and I don't want to come across like that, but you may have some Gen Y folks in the room that would say, yeah, I was earning $22 an hour as a babysitter. And then you may have people in the traditionalist generation who actually weren't earning anything at all. They may have been earning room and board, and that job doesn't exist anymore. And a Gen Y person would look at them and go, what was that? That doesn't mean anything to me anymore. So just so we're clear, these are the 4 generations that are in existence today. Probably 3 of them more so in the workplace. 3 of them probably more so in your associations than the 4th one. The 4th, traditionalists, born pre-1946. So few of those people are still in the workplace, but you might, in terms of association members, yes, no? Some, okay, a lot, okay. You've then got baby boomers, 46 to 64. Baby boomers are exiting the workplace much more slowly than traditionalists exited the workplace. What's happening is you've got now in the workplace, you've got Generation Xers butting up against baby boomers and millennials biting at the heels of Generation X. Generation X and Generation Y traditionally don't do particularly well together in the workplace. Anybody want to take some guesses as to why that might be?
The younger get paid more when they first start working than the older.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely.
Particularly in the nursing field.
Okay, great.
And it makes people.
Makes them mad.
It's
Yeah.
also just their general set of values, what they value.
Yeah.
And their values are very opposing.
Yeah. Generation X was told by their baby boomer parent, but often their traditionalist parents, work hard. Work hard, you will see a career ladder evolve. And many of them have seen that happen. But then you've got Gen Y coming in saying, I've been here 6 months, why have I not been promoted yet? With Gen X saying, because they were told to work hard. Now, the interesting thing is, I think what can happen in the workplace sometimes, or just the way we look at each other, is that we assume our way of doing something is the right way, because it's my set of values. So what Sam's going to do is talk a little bit about kind of the characteristics of each of the generations. And I think the beautiful thing is if we can value the characteristics as opposed to stereotype, because that's what we're prone to do. I think that's where you start to see the value in. If we had 4 generations in the workplace or in your association membership, what a beautiful thing. I mean, how amazing could that be? It's just that we're not very good at doing it.
So let's get the stereotypes out of the room, out of the way. So what are traditionalists? What are some stereotypes when you think about traditionalists? Conservative. What else? Loyal.
Sam, you want me to write?
Conservative, loyal, anti-technology. Old.
Let's say it. Let's put it out there.
Get all the stereotypes out.
Yeah.
I am one. So I can say.
Do what?
I said I am one, so I can say that.
Not open to change at all.
Yeah, how about inflexible?
Yeah.
Penny pinchers?
Okay.
Okay, let's move on let's move on to boomers. What are stereotypes of boomers?
Self-absorbed.
Self-absorbed.
Okay.
Workaholics.
I'd say even polite. Sorry. I'm sure you have been lovely, serious-minded people. But you see these Ameriprise, Amex Express Financial Services, they have, Dennis Hopper, peace, love, and happiness, and then they're like, and now you got a car with no money. I mean, there is this meeting of
The hippie became the yuppie.
Sold out.
Right, or, and has no money left. I mean, that's the impression I get, and I'm calling my mom going, hey, everything's okay, right?
What else, boomers?
Experience.
Yeah.
That's good.
It's a stereotype, but yeah, it's good. What others?
Should we add defensive?
Don't really question authority.
Yes, that's very true. Yeah.
Reliable.
And reliable, Sam. Somebody else just said.
Got it.
Works
All right.
in a place where
I would
long
disagree with the baby.
Gonna move on now to Xers now.
Generation X.
Generation X.
slackers.
Slackers.
Hey.
I am one. I'm good.
What else? Cynical.
Horrible work ethic.
Horrible work ethic. Okay.
We need a lot of validation.
What else?
Need
What else?
validation.
We need
Need
validation.
validation.
You're doing a good job. This is great.
Work to live, not live to work.
Okay.
Unrecognized.
Unrecognized. All right. And let's go on now to the millennials, Gen Y.
Whiners.
Whiners.
Entitled.
I think they're brilliant.
Okay, they're brilliant.
Educated.
They are well educated.
Intimidating.
Intimidating.
Because they're going to take my job.
Mhm.
Because they know how to do it faster than me.
Oh, I need your
What was
card. Let's talk
They can
later.
potentially do a job faster than a Generation X person.
Short attention span.
And what makes that happen, you wonder?
They're computer savvies
Mm-hmm.
They talk in text instead
Yeah.
of talking.
and drive at the same time.
So now we've gotten all the bad juju out. Okay, we've gotten it all out. What I want to do right now is actually, this is definitely scientific based, and certainly Jason talks about this a lot in his book. That these really are the traits, and the good traits. And again, back to Jill's point earlier, when you think about looking at the high potential of putting these 4 groups together, especially from an association membership base, what good could potentially come out of that if you really do focus on bringing out the best in everyone? This is what you could get. So certainly with traditionalists, you could say all that, but why focus on the narrative? Practical, patient, loyal, hardworking, very respectful of authority, and definitely rule followers. Would you agree with that? Traditionalists? For the boomers, optimistic, teamwork, cooperation, ambitious, certainly workaholic. Any disagreement there? And that's not a bad thing, but it's just about what guardrails you put up in place for that. For Gen X, certainly, yeah, skeptical, self-reliant, risk-taking, and really does want to balance work and personal life. They want to be able to separate the two things, and that certainly is where a lot of the conflict between Boomer and Gen X certainly happened in the workplace in the 90s. And then we've got Gen Y, incredibly hopeful. They want meaningful work. They really value diversity and change. They don't think of things in the same way in which that other generation catty-cornered them did. And they're incredibly tech-savvy. I think a lot of the reason I recruited university students for over a dozen years, and I think a lot of the things I saw from the mid-90s on, as technology took over, was that technology, although enormous benefits, certainly it did help contribute to the short attention spans. But you've got to figure out, actually stop looking at that as a negative, because certainly when you think about technology some of you have probably seen those charts of the industrial age and sort of like, here was man's progress, and then the last 200 years, skyrocket. It's not going to suddenly go back down and go to a snail's pace. So how do you adapt? How do you figure out, how do I take all four of these food groups, get them together from a membership perspective? What are some things I could offer, some opportunities, whatnot? How can I maximize this? And that's really what we want to get here to talk about today.
Mm-hmm. So this is a study which will, if you're interested, we'll send you the link to. This is a Cisco study that was done. So based on a recent Cisco survey of college grads, 70% believe being in an office regularly is unnecessary, and what they valued more than money, much more than money. 56% of them won't accept a job where social media isn't used or allowed in the workplace. And there are still organizations out there today that would view the use of Facebook or LinkedIn or going online to research or access data as a waste of time, or the person is talking to friends on Facebook and updating Facebook rather than head down, glued to their computer. So I think this is really interesting. 56% said unless I'm allowed to do that at work because it's so in the DNA of a Gen Y person, they wouldn't accept the job. If you think about a lot of Gen Y folks, as well as the generation underneath Gen Y that hasn't actually yet been named, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day who has a daughter who's 9, and I said to Sid, I said, when you wanted to learn how to do something, or when you want to learn how to do something now, what do? What does she say? She Googles or she goes to YouTube. And, as a Gen X person, I had the Encyclopedia Britannica, and that was Google. So 56% of these guys say social media. So again, from your perspective, it's all about social media. Now, that doesn't mean to say that every Gen Y person is totally tech savvy, but we would be foolish to think that anything other than them getting more tech savvy is going to happen. 80% want a choice when it comes to mobile device. This is really interesting. I remember when I started work and you got given the mobile phone and there was no choice. That was the mobile phone that you were going to use. Now, 80% say, I want a choice. I want to be able, when I come into the workplace, to ensure that this phone works with this device. And first generation as well, that actually may know more about technology than your IT folks. I think that's fascinating. Gen Ys and Millennials will challenge the technology constraints that your IT people will put into the organization and walk away if they think that technology or those constraints are too tight. Flexible work. 60% want the right to come and go as they please. And I think it's fascinating because if you're a baby boomer, you got told as a baby boomer, it's about presenteeism. You show up, make sure you're seen at your desk because being seen constituted hard work. The Gen Y and Millennials are saying, no, I'll get the work done. I just don't want to be constrained or tethered. And again, for a Gen Xer, that's hard. You'll often hear Gen Xers and baby boomers, particularly Gen X, making comments about, part-timer, or really...
I paid my dues.
Absolutely, yeah. So if you're interested, we'll send you this link because there's some very interesting statistics within this Cisco study.
So now we're going to flip it a little bit and try to get you guys to think a little bit. How many of you are really feeling that you're keeping your members engaged and up to speed?
Oh my gosh.
Okay. So we know that as well, and that's certainly something on our horizon for the next couple of years, is how do we really try to raise the stakes, and how can everyone sort of jump on board? So certainly, to toot our own horn, but, definitely bookmark the Affiniscape blog and check that out on a daily, if not every other day basis to see what's been up there. Nikki really drives that. Yeah. Baker also. And so certainly there's a lot of really good materials. We're going to start contributing next year about once a month. And so it's really important to sort of keep your eyes on that and really listen to some of the other stories from other associations, from a benchmarking perspective, and also just to be creative currently with the software you have. We love this slide too because it really has turned into this kind of button world. And we could give you guys an exam right now to try to figure out every single one of those. But I'm pretty sure that I can really, at a glance, name about 10 or 12. But certainly, of course, how many of you are not familiar with these buttons? So on a day-to-day basis, so certainly, and this is something to think about too, is when it comes to social media these days, when it comes to any kind of internet presence, whenever someone finds something they like, whether it's an article, whether it's a job description, whatever it may be, these buttons are proving pivotal in terms of click-through and getting people to actually share that information. If you're not able to share it quickly by clicking on Facebook or Twitter or Evernote or one of these different, YouTube, some of these, of course, Pandora, you're not really going to be like, I found this job and I put it on Pandora. But these tools are ways in which this is how communication is happening. It's no longer even sending an email. How many of you actually... Probably how many of you get emails or actually true emails in terms of correspondence and letters? I mean, even in the last 12 years, that's sort of passe. It's text or phone, but usually your email now is for Groupon or something like that. So in terms of being online and actually trying to generate conversation and actually share information, these buttons are pivotal.
And Gen Y, who has kids in the room who are Gen Y age? How much do you text them? How much do you talk to them?
Text them more than 99% text. Yes.
Yeah. They text. That's what they do. They don't talk. They do talk sometimes, but much, much less than they text. So again, if you think about your members and we're sending them, and I was laughing with Kevin, our CEO, who you heard speak earlier. I laughed with Kevin a few weeks ago because it was a Friday afternoon and he'd written a brilliant email about things that were going on in the business, etc., 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 and sent it out sort of 4:30 on a Friday afternoon, and I'm like, ooh, I'm not so sure. And we were talking about it on Monday, and he said, I only got one response, and he said I thought it was a compelling email, and I said, I think it was a compelling email. But if you look at just at the Affiniscape demographic, we have a fairly healthy mix of X and Y, not many boomers within Affiniscape, and they weren't reading it. That message wasn't resonating with them. Now, there was great data and information within it, but if my audience won't read it, it's a waste of time. However, you text them, they'll text back. Guaranteed. So who...
Text is much.
Text is...
You can't put as much information
Correct.
in the text.
You can't. You absolutely can't. Because they're not going to read it. So one of the... they'll do 3 to 5 lines. And that's probably about your max, but they're certainly not going to read an email with 10 paragraphs in.
And if you do send an email, the key, your hook, is your subject line.
Yeah.
Because if the subject line doesn't hook it, I'm not going to open it. That's really how it comes to, that's how it sort of boils down. So, I mean, certainly think about that as well when it comes to communication. Be careful of sending, 6 paragraphs.
Do you think that the text, if you send a text with a link to a blog or to an article, then that will get read.
Sure, and once it gets there, as long as I can share it quickly. Yeah. That's how.
So they will read.
Yes.
But
and I think that's a great point.
If it interests them.
If it interests them, they will read it. And I think sending links to blogs, which can be filed, they don't need to be read now. But we recommend that people have, tickler files, where you want more information, you want a learning file. There it is. We're going to keep sending you this. And Adam said it at the start in his opening about the amount of reading that he's doing. And it's not that Generation Y won't read, it's that they're going to do it in their time, not when I tell them to do it. And to Sam's point, and it has to pop. Yeah.
This might not even be an appropriate question for this time, so tell me, ask it later. The thought of us no longer sending information to the member, switching it back to the member accepting us to send them information in their cloud. What the heck's a cloud?
Okay.
It's okay. Well, Randy's in the room.
Randy!
When I see an engineer, I'm like,
Randy, you want to talk about what the cloud is?
Sure.
So
The
Randy
cloud-
works
really
for us.
all there is to the cloud is it's your data is not stored locally on your device anymore. It's stored on servers out at the cloud. So there's been a lot of I don't know, pop culture that's been developed around the concept of the cloud. But at the technical level, it just means your data is not stored locally. It's stored on servers and therefore can be accessed from any of your devices.
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry about transferring a file from my phone to my computer or vice versa.
And my terminology, that's my Gmail account because I have documents in my Gmail account and it's someplace that I
Absolutely.
get it
Right.
And
It's
it
not
go-
actually taking storage space on
Yeah.
your device.
Really good. The best example that I know is one called Dropbox, where it doesn't matter what's on my machine. I just have an account with Dropbox. Every important document is in Dropbox. And again, that's just a good example of cloud.
Got it. Thank you.
You bet. Never a bad question.
But you have to say, I want SCNA to send me stuff to my cloud, not the other way around. You have to provide permission to receive information opposed to just information being sent.
No, I don't
Like
think
Email
so.
blast or the past, and an email blast or in the past kind of thing. You have to do it the other way around. No?
No, it's where it's stored.
Gotcha.
It's where it's stored as opposed to the permissions up front. Is my understanding, Randy?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
So one thing too. Oh, sorry.
Well, you guys make a really valid point about the email because people, I mean, not just Gen Xers and Gen Yers don't read email. People don't read email in general. I mean, they scan it. If there's multiple calls to action in the same email, they'll do one and totally ignore everything else. So, I mean, email is really not an effective means of communication. Really never was. So how, I mean, how do you even take it bite-sized down to a tweet or?
So that's where we want to spend the majority of our time with you guys and talk about best practice and what is it that we can do if we think now that this particular forum is redundant. What is coming in its place and what is it you guys are doing? So we're absolutely going to get to that point and share lots of best practice at the end. Plus the fact that we've got still another 48 hours together. Plus come together and do more of that as well. Yes.
Okay, I'll play the devil's advocate here. I think the new technology is important. One of the things we have learned, though, that sometimes an old-fashioned phone call will do it, but you have to make sure what you're calling about. You can't call for everything.
Sure.
But if you really want specific people to take action, have somebody who knows them.
And
call them
love
about it. This is really important. I need you to do this.
And I loved what our keynote speaker said this morning. It's about emotional attachment. If I feel an emotional investment in the relationship, I'm much more likely to act. An email, and you hear it so often in the workplace, well, I sent them an email. Okay, well, I guess it didn't resonate. And so I absolutely agree with you, whether it's a telephone call or certainly, and it may not be particularly easy for you guys because your membership is disparate, but in the workplace it's actually shaking somebody's hand and it's saying hi, and it's the personal connections.
And certainly when you think about it, even though, in terms of technology today, a lot of folks are using Skype and FaceTime and whatnot, that's only going to evolve and make it easier and better. But certainly I would say too, from a generational perspective in the studies, it's text, it's also the personal touch. And it's true, if there's not an investment, whether it's a phone call, whether it's Skype, whatever that may be, whether it's face-to-face, they do value that. So you can sort of look at email and be like, you know what, how do we figure out how to get away from that or evolve from that, but let's make sure we have a high touch. With this generation, the thing is too, and I want to try and begin to start getting out of the buckets a little bit, because what I want to start doing is having you guys think outside of the box about how you can take some of these great traits and look at it from a people perspective, and how everyone does value. There's some things that everyone's on the same page about, and I think everyone would agree. If I feel that the association I'm working with is invested in me fully, if they're giving me the kind of attention and information I need on a regular basis, if I'm connecting with those things, I think all members appreciate that. The question is, how do you figure out to get the biggest bang for your buck in terms of when you're sending communications, you're going to capture more rather than have to focus on the few. And the last thing we want you to do is change your message based on generation. that's a disaster in the making. So one thing I want to talk about here too, real quickly too, is just the influences, because some of the things you look over here on the right side of the screen, I think these are some of your touch points in terms of everyone can agree upon. Here's sort of what motivates folks. So influences are on the left of this particular generation, just so you know. They're much more deeply shaped by social landscape, by politics. Certainly they're mass consumers on a huge scale, usually the first adopters of all technology. And they definitely have an opinion. They're very, very opinionated. So when you look over here on the right side, these are some things when you think about how do I craft my message? How do I make sure that when I am communicating with these folks, it's going to get them, it's going to hook them. Inclusiveness is incredibly important. Relevance, it's got to be relevant. And that's a hard thing today too as well, because especially in a SaaS business or in social media, whatever was fresh 5 minutes ago, within 5 minutes, can actually be stale. So you've got to make sure too, as you're crafting that particular message, keep it relevant. Certainly in terms of specificity, you really do want to be very specific. You don't want to go into this, you got to go here, 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 and here. One-stop shopping as much as you can in terms of that message. Here's why I'm sending you this particular message today for this reason. Responsiveness, and that's the big thing. You never know when you are ready to send out whatever messaging you're going to send out. Be ready for people to be able to respond in 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 90 seconds, 5 minutes, 24 hours, 4 days, 5 days. But you'll never know. But certainly, be ready for that avalanche, because if they do respond and they have questions, and we're not timely in our responses, that's when that emotional investment begins to go back down. So it is about making sure that when you are ready to communicate on the back end.
The 4 o'clock email, and Sam mentioned it earlier, and I thought it was really interesting. I was doing some cleaning in my inbox the other day, and what I realized was that the majority of emails that were in my inbox were from the likes of Amazon.com or Groupon, and I'm like, it's really interesting. And they get sent at 4 o'clock in the morning, and they're the least personal type of call to action I could possibly ever want. And so I went through, unsubscribe, 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 because they're clutter and noise. They're not adding anything else.
Keep going on the list, you can move on. So we definitely want to give some time here to have an open forum. Make sure too, whatever association your message is, there's an opinion behind it. They do want to actually say, I want to join this association, or I want to recommend this to my friends because this is really what they're all about. So what is your sort of call to arms in terms of what is your mission, what's your purpose? Attention for sure, in terms of just making sure that you're paying attention to your members, which you guys all do, but certainly being able to do it in a lot more active ways. Confidence is key in terms of the message as well. If they ever feel, or if anyone typically feels, this is back to Jill's point about just random emails. It doesn't matter what generation you're in. If I get an email and I don't feel like the person sending the email has any confidence, chances are I'm not going to co-sign that. And then be very ambitious. Really what we want you to do too, and we're going to sort of open it up to have a forum of this, is what are some really creative ways that we can think about it collectively for you in the short term and in the long term as well. From a development perspective, what are some things that we should be making sure we're paying attention to? And that's why it's really crucial tomorrow as well in your industry-specific meetings. You guys participate, give as much feedback as you can, and let us know your thoughts, what's on the radar, what are your biggest challenges and whatnot. Certainly here we want to do that as well in a smaller fashion today.
So the next slide talks about specifically again, Generation Y and Millennials. What is it they want? What resonates with them? Formal training. I think we've already mentioned they're the most highly educated generation, and they want to continue that training. So you guys need to be offering training. You need to be offering training to me when I want to do it. So it can't be available at 11 o'clock on, I was about to say 11 o'clock Wednesday afternoon, 11 o'clock Wednesday morning on this date. I've got to be able to go and get it when I want it. So calendaring and all that kind of stuff, thing of the past. I kind of connected to formal training. I'm going to go here. Mentors. I think this might be a really interesting opportunity for you guys, and you may already be doing it, about how you're connecting folks within the association and the membership group, and how are Generation X, Generation Y learning from the massive amount of tacit knowledge that you have in that membership base. We found that mentoring, it takes effort and it takes time to get a proper mentoring program going, and a mentor has to love what they do. They have to want to do it, and somebody has to want to be mentored. But if you can get a program which matches people appropriately, this is what I offer, this is what I want, it can actually be very compelling for Generation Y.
And when you think about the fact that this generation is probably the most underemployed of any previous generation since post-war. These are opportunities as well as, why would I want to sign up to the association? Well, they love networking. So you have to frame it from a networking perspective as well as, we have an enormous base here, really well educated, really thorough in their background. They want to share that information with
Absolutely,
you.
yeah.
And not a reverse mentorship. There's an article we recently read as well about the pitfalls and some of the impracticalities behind trying to introduce a reverse mentorship.
Yeah.
This is not what we're talking about. This is not what actually we recommend. We really are sincere about the elder coaching the younger.
Well, there's a natural.
My association, I'll get to I'll talk about it later. We're doing a fabulous job on our generational stuff and have a whole YP group that is just blown out of the water this year. But the one thing that they have told us is don't even waste your time on mentors. We will find our own. We don't set it up.
Okay.
And then the most interesting thing is one of my baby boomer members this week sent out an email to a bunch of our YPs. We call them our YPs. And it was all about the reverse mentoringship and how reverse mentoring has actually really taken us really far over the past year.
And there's an exception to every year.
It's been very interesting for
sure.
us.
So the reverse mentoring is where Gen Y is teaching the baby boomers and the traditionalists about how to get more tech savvy. Well, there was an article that we read earlier this week. There was a massive reaction to it from baby boomers saying, "Don't patronize me" and all this kind of stuff. So I think where you've seen things work, oh my goodness, this is what we need to share with each other.
And that's something too for the blog. You know what I mean? Like, we'd love to take the exception to the rule or the story that no one hears about because there's another story that's resonating in the social
small
media.
event over the summer where we brought some of our high-level members from both generations together, and the coolest part about it was to watch my 65-year-old member sitting next to my 30-year-old member on his iPhone. Like, so what is this tweet thing?
Isn't that great?
And everybody walked out of there with their own little, what the name of those codes are. It was
The hashtags.
The cute coolest thing ever, and it has really changed.
That's great.
We'd love to hear more about that.
I'd love to.
For sure, yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
It was interesting to hear you talk about how the Generation Wires, because we have tried over the years various mentoring programs, and they don't work because either one side or the other falls down. So what we try to do more is to have mentoring kind of built into natural activities. So everything you do, we have a benchmark conference with judges and attorneys. The young people go down there, they're just around older people. They can ask their opinion when they're out drinking,
Right.
They're laying on the beach or something, that
Right.
kind of thing. But just bring it in a natural way, but don't have a formal program because they don't want that.
Okay.
That's good to know, yeah.
Face-to-face or texts. So this is a very effective way of communicating with Gen Ys. Sam and I don't suggest that we're standing up here with the answer to how do you manage the whole text and membership piece. Some of you may have figured that out. We used to have an organization where I used to work. We had one of the executives in that organization that had everybody's text numbers, etc., that would text his employee base about every week, and he'd do it with a haiku, so 5 lines. Really, really compelling, and it got read. So, interesting. Community involvement. This is a big one. Generation Y and Generation X, but very much so Generation Y, want to be involved in community. They want to know what your association is doing to help the greater good, not just the association, but what's our contribution to the bigger piece. Sam and I, through interviewing now, talking to Gen Ys, will be asked, what's your policy on community involvement? You need to have one. You need to say, on a quarterly basis, Affiniscape allows our employees a day every quarter to go out and do whatever they want to do in the community. And any organization today that isn't affiliated with a broader community won't be looked on particularly kindly by Gen Y. Specifically Gen Y, less so Gen X, specifically Gen Y. Dialogue, we said it earlier, make it personal. They want to know who you are, and they want to know more than anything that you're also listening to them. So I like what you said earlier about you send it out, you send out a communication when you're there so you can immediately respond. Mobility, it's not about being tethered to a desk. We've talked about that. We at Affiniscape, I know we're working with one partner group on how to have our solution for you guys much more mobile. So your members are able to access on the go.
Yeah.
Loyalty in kind. Loyalty, Gen Y particularly wants loyalty to be rewarded. So again, whether it's recognizing efforts of members, whatever it might be, again, it's all about the personal touch. Cross-pollination, mentors. Sam, what did you mean by cross-pollination? I can't remember what that point was.
You know, it doesn't. You know, for you guys or your association, certainly there's definitely one sort of a. I don't want to say you've got your subject matter expertise, so to speak. But when you think about marketing, for example, there's different facets to marketing. So necessarily, you know, from a generational perspective, it's not that if I want to be a product marketer, hook me up with the other product marketers. You know what? Actually, I know I want to be a product marketer, but hook me up with the communications team. Hook me up with the PR team. I want to be able to look at the whole piece, but learn all the individual things internally with it. So cross-pollinate versus thinking, oh, you know, it's match A to match A, match A to C, or match A to Y, you know, whatever it may be, but don't necessarily think that it's got to be all one and the same. And basically look at the diversity of your membership base and figure out ways that you can highlight that for that audience.
Okay.
So we have a few minutes, not as much time as we would like, probably. But certainly Jill and I have our cards as well if you want to communicate. But what are some things right now you guys are currently doing, or some things that you've tried and have succeeded, or some things that you've tried and you're still a little mixed results?
Love to hear some best practice.
Yeah.
My biggest question and why I came here today was to give you guys input on how you make your case for social media to a baby boomer leadership that is
You mean leadership in the association?
Yeah, leadership
Okay.
in the association.
Okay.
So the roadblock is they don't really buy into it. They don't really.
Yeah, they don't see value
Yeah.
of it, and I don't know how to explain it.
So you're going to answer the question.
actually,
Thank you.
We have several clients who have had the same issue with social media, and I've been a big proponent in pushing it. I don't know what kind of client you have, but several of our clients are sort of public entity, local government type clients. So for us, it was a promotion of transparency. There's so much going on in the world today of, you know, like, I don't know who's on your board, I don't know where the money's going, I don't know what's going on here. It's a transparency issue. So having the social media out there allows all generations who are on it, because I believe the largest age group on something like Facebook right now is middle-aged women, and they're the largest group on them. So they have now access to your association at any time of saying, like, you know, here's our newest board members, so congratulations, here's an award to so-and-so for whatever achievement they have. Here's a great article that helps promote whatever event we have going on. So we use transparency as the ploy.
I love it.
Not the ploy, but as the reasoning behind
Yeah.
it, because it really does allow 24-hour access to all generations.
Anybody else who's had that challenge of persuading baby boomer leadership?
Well, it's in the nursing industry. It's since they work for the public. I mean, a patient, and sometimes you don't think about what you're going to put out there from a personal perspective. You know, Nurse Sally Sue had a horrible day at work today. She gets on Facebook or tweet and she goes, ah. It's now out there in the public domain, and it can be against the law, against the code of ethics, which in our state is the law. And so we've got this teeter of what is personal and what switches over to professional all of a sudden when you get social media and so that's what our state level is struggling with. I know our national association has already made some standards for social media, but that's what keeps our 2-person staff from starting a Facebook page.
That's the wild, wild west, and why I love actually working in the function I'm in right now for the next decade at least, while the courts suss all this stuff out. You know, you've got to come up with a policy that makes sense for your association and try to figure out as well the collective buy-in into it. Every organization right now is having to do that, and also have some chess pieces that you know you're going to have to move along the way as courts begin to pass judgment on certain things. Like as an employer, if I go in and look at their Facebook page, can that influence my hiring decision? You know, there's no black and white. So it's one of those things right now where I think it's fascinating and it can be fun. It can also be deadly and dangerous.
Yeah,
but you've got to figure out kind of for yourself, okay, if we want to start engaging in social media, what are our policies? And I know I'm more than happy to share certain policies. I mean, I've got samples from different organizations. It's got to be what fits for you. Because certainly when you, and that's the trick too, back to Jill's point from the Cisco survey, what's interesting for us as well right now is trying to create a social media policy when you do have a large segment of the population that everything is fair game and nothing is too personal to share. It's a challenge. So I mean, certainly we can help craft that or help you, figure out what's the best practice. But you kind of have to figure out what's our baseline, what's sort of the things we absolutely all agree on, we'll adhere to, and that our members will respect, and then we can put that out there.
It's a piece of employment legislation right now that's moving so fast and is being challenged so often that even a policy that was sanctioned yesterday by an organization may be being challenged in a court today. So it's a very interesting one. The kind of rule of thumb that we say to people is, if you want a Facebook entity, it should be an entity, it should be an association, it shouldn't be a person. It shouldn't be about spilling every personal detail, it's about the association, and you can create an identity for the association. But it's a very interesting area to be careful of right now. I can see lots of hands up, so hi.
Well, I just want to, we're starting to try and engage these younger pharmacists in the Pharmacists Association, and the way that we're starting to get them engaged through Facebook.
Great.
They want to see these, and they want to see pictures from the function the night before. They'll get on just to see a picture of them, I think.
Yes.
But when we put on links, because we want them to sign up for a conference, through Facebook, they see we're having a meeting on this. The thing that we hear is, you've got to make this easy for me, man. If I got to go to your website and then log in, they want from their Facebook, if they're logged into Facebook, they want that to be a pathway right
Absolutely,
into
yes.
Can we do that?
Facebook Connect?
Great question.
Because there's others.
It's a question for development.
So Sam and I will take that and talk to, I don't know whether you guys have yet met Neil. He's our new head of product. Neil has created a product roadmap, and is when Neil starts to articulate the vision, and Neil is very also into, okay, how do we make this product much more easy for people? So we will take that. Absolutely. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
But you can't keep them on track. Our problem is they're really into the social part of it, but you don't get them involved in the issues and the things going on, and they're just, it's like, they're right. They want to look at the pictures, they want to hear the stuff, they want to whatever, but they don't really care about that legislation that you're doing or what.
Okay. Interesting. Okay.
How do you get them past that?
I think a lot of that too, and I'll just, again, there could be 100 answers for this, but certainly I think one thing too is whatever personal testimonies you can provide about someone in your association being impacted by the legislation, preferably someone closer to their age group, could have an impact. Because someday, even though they're young in their career, they may suddenly be like, oh yeah, I wish I would have paid attention to that 5 years ago, because now I'm in the middle of it. So figure out those ways you can craft that so that they can actually get a core.
Oh, you?
I think that one of the things that we found, we're a pharmacy association too, is that they want to see those pictures, and I think if you were to put that characteristic, it would fall under every generation. I think it's human nature. People want to see pictures of themselves. You
Yes.
get a magazine, you want to see if you're in it. It's just a thing that you do. But it's not even just posting, it's posting them throughout the day. It's not even having a daily post on your Facebook, because they want to see it constantly coming through. You need to have, it's got to be a constant thing, and that's something we found is we started a Facebook page and we just kind of played at it.
Yeah.
We kind of put something out there every so. It's like they want something.
You can't play at it. You have to be totally committed to it. Yeah. Yes, I think that's a great point.
Yeah, don't I'd say that too. Figure out what if we're going to do, if it's a company ran a Facebook posting or a tweet feed, what's our number we want to start off on those day-to-day basis? Let's aim for 5 or 10 or whatnot. And don't, if you go out whole hog first or you're tentative first, that sets your tone. So figure out what you can do.
Right.
Sam, we got a comment here.
Yeah.
Our struggle is definitely with the staff time being put in to managing the social media, and that same thing. We put it out there, we put it, and blog, and there's no response back. But our struggle is, do we want to start the conversation?
It's a great question.
Spend our staff time, tweeting back and
It's a
forth
great
all day
question.
with the members, and while that's beneficial, how much
Yeah.
is too much, and that's a lot of staff time, and what's the reward of that?
That's a great question. Overhead?
We have a little bit of a solution to that, and that we started a social media task force. So it's basically volunteers, and again, it's the idea that millennials and Gen Y, they don't want to just be fed information, they want to engage and they want to give back. So I have, I manage the main
I'm with the Association for Women in Science, and I manage the main email account, so occasionally I'll get a member who will email and say, I want to volunteer, what can I do? And I always start by saying you can be a virtual volunteer. So have you liked our Facebook fan page? Are you involved in our LinkedIn group? Do you follow us on Twitter? And sometimes that means for them that's a 5-minute commitment of I just go on and I click, 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 and I'm done. And sometimes that means that we have like habitual likers. So, and I consider them volunteers, and I send them emails. Hey, Ellie, thanks for liking, everything I post, pretty much. and really, it gives the appearance to people that there's a lot of activity going on, and then that starts to snowball, and people get involved, and they do. So engage your members in a volunteer capacity.
I love it. Okay. How's back?
To piggyback off of that, we have a client that puts out a weekly newsletter every week, and it's basically just like a short article and then some job postings and upcoming education. It goes out once a week. But every week at the bottom of that article, it's join the conversation, comment on this article on our LinkedIn page. And then we have an assigned person of this group that goes on every week and starts a conversation about the article, whether it's like, oh, I totally disagree, or I found this to be, helpful in my practice. And then before you know it, we start having a lot more members are now participating since we've added that in.
Yeah, love it. And at the back, sir?
My firm is an association management company, and we've got clients ranging from several hundred members to 85,000 members. And what we try to tell all of them is in this whole communication process, it's like talking to a parade. You have got to use every vehicle available to you, and don't abandon one for the other. You've got to remember your generational gap. You've got to remember the people that still read print, the people that still read email, the people that only text. And you've got to treat your communication like talking to parade. A lot of people, a lot of different ages, just passing in front of you all the time. And you got to grab what you can.
And what I love about that is that we talked about valuing each generation, and that's what I love about that, is that you're paying as much heed to each communication vehicle, because no generation is more important than the other. Now, Generation Y is becoming increasingly important because the traditionalists are going away. And so you do need to pay attention to how you're capturing them, but I love that. It's a parade. You've got to capture as many people as you can. I'm very mindful of time, so we've got 3 minutes left. I'm a stickler for time, so we'll do two ladies here.
We redid our website earlier this year through Affiniscape. I'm with the Memphis Bar Association, www.memphisbar.org. But our part-time communications director, who's an excerpt, works from home, she set it up. She follows various Twitter feeds.
Yeah.
And so it's on our webpage. You can see there local and state news, legal news, whatever, and it constantly comes up. Whatever she's following, there's something there. It shows up on the website.
Love it, absolutely.
So we don't have to do anything. She just set it up.
Yeah.
Getting back to the question of getting your older leadership to embrace technology, I work with the Nebraska bar, and we're a mandatory bar, so a lot of the issues that the voluntary bars have, we don't have.
Right.
Our members are members because they have to be.
Yeah.
What we started doing in the last 2 years is what we call a leadership academy. We take applications for younger attorneys to come in, and we teach them the process of legislation, how it works with the system, how to talk to the media as a leader in the bar association. We try to grab them at a younger age and get them in there. And then as they get older, then they're more aware of just what social media can do. And they also go back to their senior partners at their firms and say, hey, maybe we need to start doing this. So it's kind of a melding of the minds.
Love it.
What'd you call it again? Leadership?
Leadership Academy is what we call it.
Love it. Love it.
All right.
So we're going to just leave you guys with a couple of thoughts on some of mine and Sam's kind of favorite links that we go to. So one of the things Adam said at the beginning was about knowledge. And knowledge is power. Knowledge, you use the expression from Plato, knowledge is the food of the soul. Without you guys, I guess, continually and always committing to expanding and extending your knowledge base, we're going to start to become redundant. So some stuff that we love. Here's Jason. Jason is an amazing speaker when it comes to helping organizations understand how to resonate with Gen Y. He is based here in Austin. If you'd like a personal introduction, I will absolutely do that to you. I know Jason quite well, and he and I have done some work together. This is an awesome book. I don't know whether you guys have read it, but at Affiniscape, Adam and Kevin are very keen for the leadership team and beyond to read books that can change lives. Delivering Happiness was written by Tony Hsieh. He is the CEO, not the founder, but the CEO of Zappos. And what Tony has done is talked about, again, our keynote speaker this morning talked about the investment in culture, the investment in people. What Tony Hsieh has done is not just change the shoe industry, but actually change the way that employees and employers and communities come together. Brilliant read. You will find nuggets of wisdom in that book as well. Samuel,
the rest of these are really just blogs. I try to spend 30 to 45 minutes a day, and sometimes it's at night. But TLNT is Talent, and it's a great blog. There's usually 5 to 7 articles a day. Most of it is HR focused, but certainly in terms of things going on in the workplace and things that you can sort of look at beyond, those doors to see how it affects your business, you can definitely look at that. Seth Godin, quite frankly, one of my favorite people on earth. You can subscribe to his RSS feed. An email pops in your inbox every day, and Seth is it's great in terms of thinking out of the box, how to innovate, old ways, new ways. He's awesome. Deal Book is New York Times, and that's a great blog. HBR, Harvard Business Review, they also have a great blog. And really, it's just about checking in with these blogs, figure out what for you makes sense. And certainly, sometimes you get to test drive a couple of websites for a couple of days and be like, ugh, not going to work. But these are for sure. TLNT, Seth Godin, Deal Book, and HBR for me, I'm there every day because there's something really fascinating to learn about, and it may innovate you to make things, they tried that, let's try it. So it's just good stuff. So figure out what it is for you. You can dedicate 15, 20 minutes a day, maybe 30 minutes, and then sometimes push that out to your members.
Absolutely.